Right, so just in this first class, we're going to have an overview of the course. We're going to look at the Sakai site. Has everybody been able to reach the Sakai site? I'm not sure of how that's done. We'll look at the class syllabus in terms of what is ahead of us, and especially identify the required software. So after this class, yeah, you should be able to log into the Sakai site, I assume, so we can check that off. Identify the sections of the Sakai site that I'll be using. Sakai has all these different places. I only use a handful of them. So you'll see just the places you'll need to kind of just check in on a fairly frequent basis. Most importantly, to be able to download and install the required software. Now, you may have, if you haven't had exposure to Java, that will all be new. And then assignment 1, so I'm going to throw that at you right away. Assignment 1 is basically just to get the software all set up, and we'll see what that's about. Okay, so let's take a look at the Sakai site. Let's end this show, and hopefully you should be able to see. Where are you? I'm trying to see. Zoom keeps covering up. Okay, so okay, Java as a second language. The second language part comes in because you've already had exposure to at least one other language, and in this case, 2. So there are going to be similarities and differences, but in particular, you should know about what variables are, what expressions there are, control of execution, sort of if statements, for statements, while statements, things like that. Use of functions, and we'll sort of get into why Java doesn't have anything called a function. It has things called a method. Anyway, so announcements. I think I posted. I think, is it Maya? Did you get an email about this announcement? Or no? Yes, you did. Okay, so one of the challenges is that as the instructor, I don't see things that you do. So I'm never entirely sure whether what I've done is something that you're going to kind of see. Okay, basic syllabus. Originally, well, when we go back in person, we're going to be in Watkins Hall, Monday through Thursday at 11. And Friday, the lab is going to be at 8. So instead of that, we're going to be using Zoom for the first couple weeks at least. Yeah, so basically you've all going to be exposed to the trifecta of modern languages, at least. Namely, Python is really big these days. I'm not particularly fond of it, but a lot of people are, so you've at least had exposure to that. JavaScript is the lingua franca of the web. And when it comes to serious program development, not web-based, Java is pretty much the standard these days. There are lots of other languages always kind of coming online, but Java, at least for the foreseeable future, is kind of it. So now, having said that, my experience in recent times has been that I've kind of maybe assumed a little bit too much. So the textbook that we're going to be using is actually kind of an introductory one. It kind of lacks, there are a few features that I think are important to cover that it doesn't quite cover. It covers the basics very, very well. So in terms of having a solid grounding in Java, and more importantly, in understanding what this object-oriented thing is about. You've probably heard about object-oriented. JavaScript is not the ideal place to get an understanding of what object-oriented is about. So, and we're here in Java, you're going to get a more solid grounding in my opinion. I mean, I'm not disparaging JavaScript. It's wonderful for what it does. When it comes to its object model, it leaves a lot to be desired. So basically, the thing is that you're going to have programming tools in your toolkit so that whenever a particular situation arises, you'll be able to apply that tool and solve the problem that's in front of you. Sometimes the problem is kind of externally driven. Just in the work that I'm currently doing for NavSup, just as an example, they had developed a number of very, very nice applications in using Visual Basic in Excel. They were actually developed by a professor here on campus, and great programs. And their problem is that in order to integrate with their system, it had to be in Java. So that's when they contacted me, and I basically kind of took this other program and implemented it in Java, so they were able to integrate it. So that's an example of, to be honest, I thought it was a little bit silly because they had a perfectly working program. It just that their IT policy said it had to be in Java. So you'll encounter stuff like that. Okay, so basically the Monday through Thursday, I'm going to talk at you, and they'll be reading and stuff like that. But really, the only way to learn programming is to program it. So I'll be trying to, as much as possible, have you actually doing stuff like that. Okay, so now you're all in graduate school, so I assume by then you know how to read, so you can kind of read this. Now, just a few things to point out. Pretty much every Friday at the beginning of the lab period, there's going to be a short online Sakai quiz. It's multiple choice, true, false, just on what the material was covered. That's just sort of just the basics to make sure that we're all on the same page for that. Typically, there will be assignments. Sometimes, typically, the assignments will have a length of a day or two or three, depending on how fast you go. Or sometimes there'll be some in-class things. So that'll. You should be looking at the various things. That's about 20% of the grade. In terms of, there'll probably only be one project, but that's going to be a fair chunk of the grade. And there's going to be a midterm and a final exam as well. If we're in person, those will be in person. If we're not in person, then last year it was a real pain in the butt, but we managed to get it done. Okay, so I assume everybody has a textbook. I assume that you also have a computer that's running either Windows, Mac OS X, or Linux. Any one of those three will work. If you have another operating system, then and for some reason Java doesn't work on it, see me. I've never encountered that recently. But basically, when I first started teaching programming here, students did not have the kind of experience with computers that you and the recent classes have. So I mean, I remember in the early days had to kind of really get people over of how to use a mouse and how to how to open an application. So it's like you guys are all over that. So that's, but just in case, if you know how to manage the files and receive the electronic course materials and, use the internet and stuff like that. These days, you guys are, run rings around me for that because I'm kind of an old fogey, but that's the way it is. Okay, so now just kind of getting to the kinds of things I want you to at least get started on right away so we can make sure that there are no big hiccups on that. We are going to be using an open source Java called OpenJDK. There's a kind of a packaging of it called Adopt OpenJDK, which is suggested. If you want to use something else, then again, just the main thing is get at least version 11 on your Java. That really is the first thing. Now we're going to be using an IDE called NetBeans. Again, it's another open source. It's an Apache project right now. It used to be part of Oracle, but then they offloaded it. Just the way that this works, you need to install Java first because NetBeans requires Java just to install itself. So, and then using PDF, you guys probably use all kinds of PDF. Now, so the first potential speed bump is getting Java and NetBeans installed. So that's kind of one of the first things. The bigger speed bump is something called GitLab, which NPS has a site. Have you used GitLab before in any of your other classes? Anybody? No. Okay. All right. So that's going to take a little bit of doing, but it's critical because that's how you're going to submit your stuff to me. We'll come back and kind of go through all that. Anyway, main textbook is Java Software Solutions, 9th edition by Lewis and Loftus. And then there's a lot of stuff on the internet. Some of it is good. So just be careful. Now, as a CS course, the CS has a policy that I'm only allowed to assign 20% of the students a grade of A. I'm not particularly fond of that because if I have a particularly excellent class, I'm not averse to giving everybody an A. So, but the CS department says I can't. So that's their feeble attempt to try to combat what they call grade inflation, but that's okay. So you can kind of read the rest. Really the one thing has to do with kind of sharing stuff. What can be shared? When it comes to the assignments, the basic assignments, I actually, if you find sharing, learning from each other is beneficial. I have found that in the past, a lot of times you guys learn better from each other than from me. Why? Because sometimes I'm kind of too close to the material. I've literally been programming Java pretty much since version 1, which is like a long time. So what that does is that means that sometimes it's difficult for me to understand what your difficulties are, whereas your colleagues do. So when it comes to the basic assignments, it's okay if you kind of look at each other's stuff. What's not okay is just sort of copying and pasting. So just that's really not a good thing. So if you're kind of struggling with something and you have somebody who's solved it, you say, okay, how do I do this? And they explain it to you. That's perfectly fine. Or like, how did you do this? Again, type it in yourself at the very least. That's fine. Now, when it comes to the projects, though, that's going to be completely individual work. That's a little bit different. So we'll go into that more when that happens. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, just kind of continuing with the site. Resources is another place where you're going to find stuff. The slides that I'm doing will be uploaded typically like a little bit before each class, so you can kind of download them and take a look at them. So those are going to be appearing piecemeal. The other resources are So far, there are no handouts, but at some point there will be. They'll be put in this place right here. The lessons. Now, there are two items on this. One is a rough weekly schedule. So that this is kind of the plan for the quarter. So, and it's kind of roughly laid out. So I don't feel completely compelled to strictly adhere to this, but this is more, so it's like if we're on week 3, then we're probably, somewhere around chapter 4, stuff like that. The more detailed one is going to be the daily schedule. That'll be a little bit more dynamic. So after pretty much actually before each class, I'll kind of post something about how what's going to be going on for that. And part of the reason that's dynamic is because that's going to depend on how far I got on the previous class. So that is just a place to be checking fairly regularly. The assignments, this is where they're going to be. Okay, let me switch to, if you notice that I have some, let me see this as you, so you don't see the, okay. So, so as you can see, there's the first assignment has been posted already. And if typically it will be a Word document as the handout, and then sometimes, okay, so the main thing for this is to install Jdk and Netbeans. So, and there are links to that. And then we kind of get into the GitLab thing. Now, to that end, there are videos that I have posted that try to walk you through this. And those are, so for example, it comes up. So here's a video on how to create a GitLab repository. And then the whole thing is that once NetBeans is installed, then you want to create your first NetBeans project. Again, there's a video to walk you through that. Then you want to create your local Git repository and synchronize it with GitLab. Again, there's a video for that. And then finally, add me as a developer on that. And again, the handout kind of explains what's going on with that. So, and again, I know this is day 1. I'm throwing an assignment at you. It's not due until Thursday. So, but basically, this is important for a couple. There are a number of reasons why using a version control system like Git, especially with something like GitLab, is important. But the main thing is that that's how you're going to be submitting your assignments, your programming assignments. So you're not going to, no email, no uploading stuff. Well, it's kind of an upload, but you'll do it from within your IDE and do what's called a push. And all that will be explained, and I think the video kind of walks you through that a little bit. Okay, where are we here? All right, so as assignments are posted, they will appear in this one. The quizzes will be on this test and quizzes tab. So that will appear on that'll typically be the first like 10-15 minutes of the lab. So that is that's like all this other stuff. I don't really I won't be using. Oh, and there's all of the videos are going to be in a video channel. Let's, darn you. And yeah, so here are the videos that I've already posted, so you can look at them all on the channel there. here. Okay. So where are we? We are back here. Wait. Okay, so yeah, Java. All right, so next steps, the assignments. Well, assignment 1, you can just sort of download it from the assignment tab, as I say, the links to the videos. And then for tomorrow, the reading is going to be the first chapter, focusing on sections 1.4 to 1.6. In the chapter, they go through a bunch of stuff in the beginning about that talks about this is how computers are organized, and this is the CPU and all that other kind of stuff. You're not responsible for that. But starting in section 1.4, they start talking about Java a little bit. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And that's basically what now. What I'm going to, what I'll typically do is, you notice that I'm recording this, like all of the lectures will be recorded. Even when we're in person, I'll try to record as much as I can. And then those are going to be uploaded to the playlist in the YouTube channel. Okay, so that's what I have for today. Are there any questions, concerns, comments? See some.
Sir, are you open to doing our lab during this time block on Fridays instead of at 08? Or do you have a scheduling conflict?
I am. Would you be able to do it at 10?
We have another class or we have another lab during that period. It's fine if we can't move it. But
yeah, I am absolutely open. 8 o'clock is kind of a little too early for me, to be honest. My only challenge on that is that I have another meeting immediately after that. The thing with the labs is that there will be an assignment. Well, okay, the first part will be the quiz. And as I found sometimes when I write a question for an exam or a quiz, then I know what I meant, but it wasn't necessarily what I said. So usually I need to be there to answer, oh, what did you mean by this? So I'll be around to answer that. Other than that, most of the lab time will be you doing, work with me, hanging around to kind of troubleshoot. So if it just that on, if I move it to 11, I mean, I really have to duck out fairly, like maybe at a quarter till. But if you're okay with that, then I'm more than happy to move it there.
I'm good with that. Is there any feedback from the rest of the group?
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that.
Okay, anybody, any objections? I mean, if we're all united in that, then I will make it so. And that actually makes it easier. And Outlook won't let me, the reason you got 2 invites is because Outlook won't let me schedule something at a different time as part of the same thing, which is kind of a little cuckoo, but okay. So I will send an update for that, but that's all I have for today. And if there's nothing else, then I will see you tomorrow.
One additional question, sir.
Sure.
Did you send out a link, or is there a link in the Sakai site for that YouTube channel?
I will add the link for the channel. There are links to the individual videos at various places, but where shall I post it? I'll post it in the I'll edit the syllabus and add a link to that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, good idea. Okay. So I will see you tomorrow.